I have just applied and been approved for what I think is the worst travel credit card on the market. Yes, you heard me right. At least in my opinion, what I think is the worst, if not one of the worst travel cards on the market, is now in my wallet. So now you may be thinking, why would I apply for what I think is the worst travel credit card in the game? I mean, that just doesn't make sense, right? Well, there are three specific reasons as to why I applied for this card, which I'm going to get into in this video. And the third reason I feel like is a reason that isn't talked about enough, but for my long term goal, it makes sense. All right, I'm not going to keep you waiting any longer. What is this so called terrible card I applied for? Well, that is the American Express Marriott Bonvoy Bevy credit card. So, real quick, before we get into the three reasons as to why I applied for the credit card, let's quickly go over why this card is so bad, at least in my opinion and many others. So first off, this card has a $250 annual fee, which means right up front you got to pay that bad boy. So you're going to be paying $250 no matter what just to hold the card. So now, what do you get with the card, such as credits, benefits, and whatnot that help make up that annual fee? Well, that's where the issue lies. This card doesn't really come with anything that helps justify that $250 annual fee. The card gives you Gold Elite status. Well, so do plenty of other cards that are honestly much better. The card does have some okay multipliers. It has a 4x multiplier that really isn't too bad, but again, you can get that from other cards, and you're also earning Marriott Bonvoy points, so not as valuable. The main benefit with this card is actually earning a 50K free night certificate with Marriott Bonvoy. However, you do have to spend $15,000 each year to receive that free night certificate. And that is where the problem lies. There are plenty of other Marriott Bonvoy cards out there that give you a free night certificate without spending any money on the card. All you have to do is just hold the card and pay that annual fee. That should be the case with this card, but it's not, and that's the issue with it. For many of us, and especially in my case, there are much better ways to spend $15,000 on a card. I mean, you can apply for like three other different credit cards, hit those welcome offers, and that would easily be worth much more than one free night certificate with Marriott Bonvoy. And also, if you want a free night certificate after spending 15K, you can get the Hilton Surpass card, as that free night certificate is uncapped. You'd have to book a standard room, but still, I mean, you can basically book any room as long as there's a standard one. Whereas this Marriott Bonvoy card, it has to be a 50K or less free night certificate. Of course, you can top that off, but regardless, it's just not as good as some of the other options out there. I mean, you can get multiple Chase Ink cards, which would give you hundreds of thousands of points. You can get some other Amex personal cards and do the upgrade downgrade game, where basically if you have one certain level of an Amex card, they'll give you an upgrade offer. You can then upgrade and spend a certain amount of money to get a nice chunk of points and just keep doing that with that same amount of spend. I mean, there's plenty of other options out there. So, in my opinion, this card really is not worth it for pretty much anyone besides the first year when you originally apply for the card. There's a few reasons for that, which I'm now going to go over. So, getting into those reasons as to why I applied for the card. Reason number one is that at the time of applying, there actually was an elevated welcome offer on this card. The normal welcome offer is earning 85,000 Marriott Bonvoy points after spending $5,000 in 6 months. That offer isn't terrible, but we can do better than that. And that's exactly what came up. There was an elevated offer where I could earn 155,000 points for the same amount of spend in the same amount of time. Now, that is much better. I mean, the 85K is still worth like $700. I mean, we value Marriott points at about zero point 0.8 cents per point, so roughly 700, which isn't bad, but with a 155,000 point welcome offer, again at about zero point 0.8 cents per point, you're well over $1,000, and depending on the property, you can actually do even better than that. So this is a much better welcome offer. And as someone who is solely focused on welcome offers, at least at the moment, that is something I wanted to do, where when a welcome offer came up, I want to apply for that card, get a nice chunk of points, and then move on to the next. That then leads me into reason number two. And this reason kind of goes along with the first one, with the welcome offer. I specifically need Marriott Bonvoy points for a future booking about a year, a little over a year from now, actually, where I need a solid chunk of Marriott Bonvoy points for a specific stay I have in mind. So, what better way to get some Marriott Bonvoy points when I need them the most than applying for a card that has an elevated welcome offer, hitting that spend requirement, and having that hit my account? I already have a solid amount of transferable currency points that I can use for my upcoming stay, which I do plan to use for that stay and a few other stays as well. So in this case, I really need those Marriott Bonvoy points, and you can transfer them from Amex as well as Chase, but it's not the best value, so I wouldn't recommend it. So in this case, the better value was to simply just apply for a new card. Now, those were the main reasons as to why I applied for this card, because even with that $250 annual fee, this welcome offer will easily offset that plus more. Because if I was already planning on spending some money on this specific stay I have in mind, why not spend much less upfront by simply just paying 250 bucks, hitting that welcome offer, and then using those points instead? Now, reason number three, I feel like isn't talked about enough. It's a pretty solid reason, especially for a long-term strategy with Marriott Bonvoy. And that reason is that you can actually product change and downgrade an Amex Bonvoy card to a $95 annual fee Amex Bonvoy card. Now, this card is actually not open to new applications, so you do have to downgrade from a different card, specifically with American Express. And that is what I plan to do with this card, as obviously I do not need the bevy open after a year, because at that point, it's pretty much worthless to me, let's be real. So instead, what I plan on doing is actually downgrading the bevy to this $95 annual fee Bonvoy card with American Express. And the main benefit with that card is you get a 35K free night certificate, once again, just for holding the card and paying the annual fee. So having that card and paying the $95 up front to then get a 35K free night certificate with Marriott, I mean, it should be pretty easy to make up the annual fee just by staying with them once per year using that free night. It should be pretty simple. That's really the only reason I want the card. And as I alluded to earlier, it's kind of a long term Marriott Bonvoy strategy that I'm aiming for. Reason being is Marriott is going to be one of the main programs I use in the future, as in my opinion, they just have some of the best properties all around, and they also have the most properties out of any other program. So it seems like a no-brainer for me. And regarding the long-term strategy where I can get multiple free night certificates from holding multiple Marriott Bonvoy cards, it makes sense to me because, like I said, I do plan on staying with them the most often, kind of up there with IHG as well as Hyatt. So I would like to have at least a few Marriott Bonvoy cards in my wallet where I can earn some free nights every single year, use those for some upcoming stays, whether they be in the States or internationally. Even in the future, if I don't even travel out of state, I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and Marriott Bonvoy basically owns Phoenix, if you don't know that. And what I mean by that is Marriott has a ton of resorts here in Phoenix. Honestly, just Arizona as a whole. Tucson has some fantastic resorts as well. And so even if we can't go out of state, worst case scenario, I'm fairly confident I can use these free nights here in Arizona, even in Phoenix, for a staycation. Both my wife and I can go out, have a nice weekend at one of these fancy Marriott properties. They have a ton of resorts here. And so that's my worst case scenario, which if I'm not traveling internationally or even somewhere across the country, I'm fairly confident I can use these free nights here in my home state. Then, of course, you get plenty of other benefits with these cards, such as platinum status once I have the Brilliant, which I don't have yet. It's kind of another side reason as to why I applied for the Bevy card before I applied for the Brilliant, is there is family language. If I have the Brilliant card, I can no longer get the welcome offer with the Bonvoy Bevy. So I got that first, and then I'll get the Brilliant afterwards. That way I can get both sign-up bonuses. And let me clarify, you can still get the Bevy after you have the Brilliant. You just can't get the welcome offer from the Bevy, which that kind of defeats the purpose of it. And if you do want more information on the restrictions with Marriott Bonvoy cards, as there are quite a few, and it's kind of frustrating. For example, if you apply for a Chase Marriott Bonvoy card, you then have to wait 24 months after receiving that offer to then apply for an Amex Marriott Bonvoy card if you want that offer as well. So there's a ton. There's also family language, like I mentioned. But my guy, Stan the Credit Frog, did make a very solid video explaining this in detail. And he also goes over the strategy of having multiple free nights with Marriott Bonvoy. So check out his video if you haven't seen it already. It goes into great detail with this. And that kind of explains what my long-term goal is with Marriott as well, as I do plan to have multiple cards that give me free nights. So because of that long-term strategy, as well as these reasons I listed out in this video, that is why I applied for what I would consider the worst travel credit card in the game. Let me know down in the comments if this is something you would also consider, applying for honestly a terrible card just for the welcome offer alone. In my case, it just made sense for me, so I decided to go with it. But as I mentioned, I will be getting rid of this card in 12 months. At a minimum, I'll be downgrading the card to that $95 annual fee card. Otherwise, probably just canceling it. But either way, I will not be holding on to it for longer than 12 months unless they revamp it, which honestly they should. I do plan on pairing this card with the Ritz-Carlton card. And in full transparency, the Ritz-Carlton card will be under my name as I'm applying for the Chase credit cards as of now. And then my wife is actually the one who's applying for the Amex Marriott Bonvoy cards. So I will be getting that Ritz-Carlton here shortly. If you're curious about that card and why I think it's one of the best hotel cards in the game, if not the best, go ahead and check out this video here. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next one.